Am I too old to get into property? That's the question that we're going to be asking today. Okay, so the question is, are you too old to get into property? And I think before we answer that question, there's two elements to that question that we need to answer. So the first part of it really is what I would say mortgageability. And secondly is for you to think about and decide what it is you want to do with the property. Mortgageability, let's talk about that first. So a few years ago, there was an upper limit on mortgages, particularly on residential. So a lot of lenders would say that by the age of 75, you have to have the mortgage redeemed and paid off. So if you were 73 and you applied for a mortgage, they will give you a 2-year mortgage. But a lot has changed in the last few years. And all this was brought about in the credit crunch, in the 2008-2009 crash. But as I say, a lot has changed in the last few years. So now, we're not going to talk about residential mortgages on this video. We're going to talk about buy-to-lets, okay? So if you're 70 years old and want to apply for a buy-to-let mortgage, there are lenders that will lend you now for 10, 20, 30 years into the future. Even better is if you apply in a limited company. There are limited company lenders that will give you a mortgage for the limited company and don't care about the upper limit. So you could apply for a mortgage at 80, 85 years old in the limited company and you would still get a buy-to-let mortgage in the limited company name. And the reason for that is that they know that you can pass it on to your next of kin, to your children, to your grandchildren. As long as they're at the age of getting a mortgage, which is 18, then they can assume the guarantor role for that mortgage. So that's the mortgage side of it, okay? But more importantly, so we've established now that it doesn't matter what age you are to get a mortgage. There are lenders out there that will give you a mortgage. But more importantly, what you need to ask yourself is, what are you trying to achieve? What is your strategy? So let's take a look at the different types of strategies. So we've got a cash flow strategy. So depending on your age, you might want to have a monthly income from your property portfolio, what I would call a cash flow strategy or an income strategy. You might want to have lump sums of money. So you might be doing flips and get those. If you watch previous videos, you'll see me talk about the conveyor belt method. So you might want to buy a property that's run down, do it up, add some value and make a lump sum of money. And typically you can make £25,000 to £30,000 per flip. So I'll just put down here lump sum. The third type of strategy for earning money from property, if you like, is equity growth. And this is where you buy a property and you don't really care about the cash flow now. It may be for a pension provision, it may be for something in the future. So it's more of a long-term strategy, more of long-term growth, okay? So you buy a property today for £100,000 and you're relying on that equity growth over the next 10, 20, 30 years. Okay, so I'm going to put equity growth. Okay, so we've got the 3 different types. Monthly cash flow to replace your income will give you an additional income. We've got lump sums of cash, which is like when you do a refurb and you do something to it and get lump sums of cash after you sell it. And we've got equity growth, which is more of a long term. Now, the reason I say that this is important, because if you think about it, if you're 60 years old, you probably aren't going to be bothered about equity growth. The chances are you're either retired or you're approaching retirement and you probably want some cash flow. You want to replace that income or you want to supplement your pension. You're probably not going to be bothered about equity growth, okay? On the flip side, if you're 25 years old, then yes, you probably still want to replace your income because most people do. But if you're 25 years old, you've got time on your side, so you can afford to wait for 10, 20, 30 years. Let's just say if you're going to retire at 50 and you're 25, well, if you're 25 now and you're going to retire at 50, you've got 25 years before you retire, so you can afford to get some equity growth. If you're 65, you're not going to want to do that, or most 65-year-olds aren't going to want to do that. Okay, so that's why I'm saying that in answering the question, are you too old for property? It all depends what you want to do with it. You're not too old for property. As we've just established, you can still get mortgages and finance, but depending on what you want property to do for you depends on whether you are too old. So whether you want cash flow, as we just discussed, lump sums, equity, okay? Now, are you too old to do refurbs? Absolutely not. Yeah, I've got people in their 70s that are doing refurbs, because with refurbs, with the lump sum strategy, the conveyor belt strategy, it's all about systemizing it. So systems are in place so that you aren't physically doing the work, you aren't physically painting, you aren't decorating. So you're not too old. So if you're limited by something physical, like, you know, age, for example, and you can't do certain manual tasks, it's all systemized. So no, you're not too old in that instance. So guys, hope that was useful. A fairly short video today. If you do want some free training, then I do a free training course. It lasts for about 30 minutes and it just goes through the 5 steps to take you from knowing nothing to having a monthly cash flowing property portfolio. So if you want access to that free training, just drop me an Instagram DM or drop me an email and I'll send you the link for that. All that leaves me to say, guys, is don't forget to subscribe, like the channel and hit the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video.